Hello. Looks like that's my cue to start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the League of Independent Theaters Meet the Candidates Forum. My name is Amy Todoroff, she, her, Managing Director of the League of Independent Theater. I am speaking to you through Zoom from the unceded ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape people. The League does wish to acknowledge that though we may be in diverse areas of New York City, we are all living on and benefiting from stolen land and stolen labor. We ask that those on this call consider the history of this place we call home, as well as the access to resources that make this technological miracle a possibility for so many of us. These last 12 months have brought many challenges, to say the least, a lot of pain, and so much instability, particularly for our community. As we remember all we've lost this past year through violence, through a broken system, through lost opportunities, and especially as we remember those lives taken by COVID-19, please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. It is with these thoughts top of mind that we use as our guides as we look towards the future. We have a historic opportunity with this election cycle to radically rebuild the city of New York. 2/3 of our city council will be term limited out, and we will have brand new leadership, including a new speaker and a new majority leader on our council. We'll have a new mayor, a new comptroller, and 4 new borough presidents. This is the urgent moment for indie artists to have our voices heard and to make sure our elected officials understand that there is no New York City without New York City's artists. So here is what you should expect from today's forum. We'll have 6 panels grouped by region: Lower Manhattan first, then Queens, mayor and comptroller, Upper Manhattan, borough presidents, and then Brooklyn. Each panel will be approximately 30 minutes. The candidates on each panel have been chosen based on their responses to a questionnaire sent out by LIT to every single candidate we could identify running. That's right, we sent out a questionnaire to everyone. We couldn't invite every person who responded to the questionnaire to this event. That does not mean that we're not still considering those candidates. It simply means that based on their answers, we felt that these candidates were best suited to get to know our community and that you should get to know them. When we publish our Indie Theater voting guide, you will have an opportunity to see some of those responses, even from candidates that aren't here tonight. You will also have an opportunity to vote and give us specific thoughts about the candidates by clicking on the survey that you will see dropped in the chat throughout the forum. In the survey, you will see which candidates responded to our questionnaire and which did not respond to our outreach at all. You'll notice we're using ranked choice voting. You can choose up to 5 candidates to rank in order of your preference. It's good practice to use ranked choice voting in that June 22nd primary when you'll all go out and vote. So look out for that survey in our chat. We're going to keep as close to on time as possible, but this is a long night. So to delight and entertain you, we are also going to have a special performance in between panels by my friend and wonderful human being, Marco the Clown. Finally, before we move into our first panel, LIT has a message from one of New York City's strongest arts champions. This candidate for Queens Borough Council President for Queens Borough President has always been a champion for indie theater artists. Council member Jimmy Van Bramer is isolating at home due to his recent COVID-19 diagnosis, but he has still taken the time and energy to send this message to LIT membership.
Hello to all of my friends at the League of Independent Theaters. You are always lit to me. I just wanted to say thank you for the years of partnership. It has been the honor of a lifetime to represent yourselves, artists, independent theater, and those who make New York City everything that it is. It has been an incredibly difficult time, but I am proud to have been one of the few elected officials who, even during the pandemic, in fact, particularly during the pandemic, focused on artists, talked about independent theater, performance venues, and the absolute imperative that we focus on artists, getting artists back to work, paid, and being able to perform. I'm running for borough president. I'd love to have your support. I've always been there with you. I will always be there with you, no matter what. Thank you very much for even considering me. And if elected borough president, you know you'll have the same fierce, lit champion for the arts, for independent theater that you've always had in me. Thank you very much.
Oh, that message. We are all wishing Councilmember Van Bramer a quick return to his trademark high spirits and high energy as he campaigns for Queens Borough President. So for the first time ever, I am very pleased to announce that LIT has endorsed a candidate before our Meet the Candidates Forum. Jimmy Van Bramer has not only heard our concerns, he's made the midnight calls, he's taken those late night Zoom meetings to make sure that indie theater artists are at the government table. LIT wholeheartedly endorses Jimmy Van Bramer for Queens Borough President. And now with that, let's move into the first panel with Robbie. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert. I am League's Director of Election Engagement, and we're starting all the panels in downtown Manhattan, the birthplace of indie theater, of course. So for our panelists, I hope everyone is here, but we'll go around. I will call on you by name. I would love for you to tell us who you are and then what council district you're running in 5 words or less, why are you running for city council? We'll start with Christopher Marte.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Christopher Marte, and I'm a candidate for City Council in District 1, which represents all of Lower Manhattan. I'm running for City Council because I want to stop residential and commercial displacement.
Excellent. Gigi Li.
Hi, good evening. I'm Gigi Li. I am running for Lower Manhattan District 1 City Council, and I'm running for City Council to bring equity back into our system.
Councilmember Rivera.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Carlina Rivera. I'm running for re-election to represent where I was born and raised in District 2, and I'm running to build on my record and create a 5-borough resiliency plan.
And I don't see Aletta. Aletta, if you're here and I'm just not seeing you, speak up. No. We'll move to Erik.
Hi, everyone. My name's Erik Bottcher. I'm running for City Council in District 3, home of the highest concentration of theaters anywhere in the world. I'm running for City Council to make the world a better place.
Erik, that was you. How about Councilmember Keith Powers?
Hi there, I'm City Councilmember Keith Powers, representing City Council District 4 on the east side of Manhattan. I'm running because I love New York City.
Kim.
Hey everybody, I'm Kim Moscaritolo. I'm running in the 5th Council District, and I'm running because we need transparency and accountability, not more failed leadership.
And finally, Julie.
Hi everyone, it's Julie Menin. Great to be with all of you. I'm running for City Council District 5 because I believe we need strong, experienced leadership in this crisis. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for keeping it brief. We're going to move right along. Though your area is the birthplace of our indie theater movement, closed since March of last year, The Pit, Simple Studios, Shetland Studios, Avenue C Studios, Champion Studios, the Playroom Theater, and that is not a complete list. COVID has only exacerbated the long-running problem of affordability for indie performance spaces. So we're going to start off with a question from someone who runs one of those indie performance spaces down in Council District 2, and you'll have a chance to respond after the video.
Hi, my name is Ana Maria de Quesada. I'm the producing artistic director of the Wild Project Theater, located in Manhattan in the Lower East Side. And pre-pandemic, we've had a constant struggle with our rent and our rent increases that we've endured throughout the years. From 2017 till 2020, we had a 125% rent increase. And this has always had difficulty for us in being able to grow and be able to service our community in the ways that we always dream that we can. And now with the pandemic, it's just exasperated everything. And I'd like to know what you will do if you support commercial rent stabilization. And if so, if you're willing to really put the effort into getting into committee and getting this bill passed, which is vital to small businesses such as ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anamati, for the question. Everyone, 60 seconds to offer a response to that. For all responses this evening, we will be keeping strict track of time. When your time is up, you will be muted, and we will move on to the next panelist. So mostly random order here, but I think we do need to start with the Wild Project's council members. So Carlina Rivera, please start us off.
Thanks so much for the question, and I'm so sorry to hear of your experiences. I do fund the Wild Project through discretionary funds. I fund about 60 arts organizations serving my district. I do support Intro 1796. I think that it is a really important bill to lay the groundwork to regulate what is a market that needs to become more affordable and predictable. I also have another bill called the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act that give nonprofit developers and community land trusts a first crack at vacant lots. And that is to really create more affordable commercial and residential space. So I support the bill. You all need real rent relief, and we have to get creative in our solutions. Open culture was one thing that we all sponsored and support, but we have to do a lot more. And I do love your organization, as so many in my district.
You're not alone. Me too. I love them as well. Councilmember Powers, thank you. Please start.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having us. And I know that right now is an urgent moment for the arts and cultural institutions that make up the city, because they are who New York City is, and they are going to be the path to recovery here. During this pandemic, you read my Twitter, almost every single day I'm talking about arts and saving our live performance venues here in New York City. And I had worked with Senator Schumer. We had stood outside in my district, outside of Broadway, talking about the need for federal relief for those venues. And as we speak right now, I have a letter that's being circulated in the council that would be for setting aside federal relief to the city to save our cultural institutions and save our stages. So it is a local version of the federal relief program. And I think as we discussed that, we should talk about rent regulation type of programs for our live cultural venues that are our smallest venues and will need not only the federal relief, but also will need some way to keep them stable. So I'd love to work with LID on a program like that. And of course, as we get to the point of this budget process of pushing on the mayor to provide that relief, I certainly would love to work alongside you to give us that political push to get that across the finish line.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Ms. Lee.
Hi, thank you for having me. So I absolutely support rent relief for performance venues. I also believe that there should be relief in terms of property tax. I also think that another aspect is that we need to make sure we can keep artists housed. And so something that has been very difficult, but other municipalities and states have been able to figure out, is subsidized artist housing. And New York City has failed there, and I commit to being a leader in that regard to make sure that there is a comprehensive approach to supporting theaters and artists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bottcher.
I do support this legislation. I also, as council member, will use every opportunity I have in the land use project process to require developers to create permanently affordable artist space and performance space. Also, I believe the city needs to get more creative about ways to use currently vacant space, vacant storefronts, activating them with performance space, artist space, something that we've begun to do locally at the community level in the last few months. City really needs to get creative about how to make that happen throughout the city. And I support tax incentives for artist space and theater space as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Menin.
Absolutely support this. I was a former commissioner of media and entertainment, and I'm so proud of the fact that I stepped in and saved Soho Rep, who, as you all know, was going to lose their space in Lower Manhattan, and I stepped in to save that space. We have to address this unaffordability issue, and we have to address it legislatively with really strong protections to keep venues in their spaces. I also launched, as Commissioner of Media and Entertainment, the first fund for women playwrights and women filmmakers, where we are giving direct cash grants of up to $50,000. We need to do so much more. I don't think you will find a stronger ally and supporter on this issue than I. I've been working on these issues for many, many years, and the city, quite frankly, needs to do much more to ensure that we're protecting our amazing cultural venues and independent theaters. It's the lifeblood of New York City, and we have to do everything possible to support them, and I would do that.
Thank you so much. Mr. Marte.
Yes, I fully support the Cancel Act and also to have rent stabilization for commercial tenants. I also believe that we have to have land use policies which end speculation, which usually forces out theaters, small businesses, and people who live here as well. And as a council member, I support a plan already that's the community created called the Chinatown Working Group Plan to end the speculation. As a son of an immigrant who actually used performing spaces, the Teatro Yati, which is off Broadway, located on 4th Street. I spent most of my childhood, collecting tickets and, making sure that he can have an opportunity to follow his dream, to share his poetry and his playwriting skills. And so I fully believe in this, and we have to cancel rent for theaters and other commercial space.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Moscaritolo.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I absolutely support commercial rent stabilization. Additionally, I've been a big supporter for a long time of the Small Business Job Survival Act, which I believe would be very necessary for helping small business owners, including theater owners and theater companies, stay in their spaces. This is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. Last year, I hosted a forum on these issues with Guy Edwab from League of Independent Theater and a number of artists, as well as State Senator Jose Serrano, on what we could do to help theaters. In the comments, it was mentioned that budget negotiations are currently going on. In addition to what we can do as a city, I would commit as council member to fighting in Albany for greater investments in the arts programs and in theaters. I would fight for real rent relief. There's currently a bill from Senator Hoylman and Assemblymember Epstein that would provide $500 million in rent relief to small businesses, including theaters, and I am absolutely supportive of any of those efforts. We need to do everything we can to save theater, not just because the arts is so meaningful and important, but because it is a huge economic driver in this city, and we need to do everything that we can to support them.
Great, that's time. Thank you so much. Everyone, wonderful responses. Thank you. For our next questions, I would ask you all to keep your responses under 90 seconds. So we have a little bit more time, and I'm going to ask you some direct questions. We'll start in Council District 5 to Julie Menin. Your work with the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, as you mentioned, gives you a unique insight into indie theater's unique world. As a council member, though, how would you work to create more sustainable, independent performing arts spaces in your district?
Oh, thank you for that question. So as you mentioned, yes, I've been a huge supporter of the arts and the work I did as Commissioner of Media and Entertainment. We first of all need to address the affordability crisis, which we talked about before. We need to create more affordable cultural venue space, but we also need to address it through the ULURP process. There is no reason why, when projects are not going through ULURP, that creating new cultural spaces should not be a top priority. We have to remember that to rebuild our city, it's going to require the arts and supporting the arts. And that's something that has to be at the forefront. The other way I would do it is, honestly, NYC and Company is the city's marketing and tourism arm. I used to serve in their executive board. They are not doing enough to promote our cultural venues in the city. They have a multi-million dollar budget. They have 18 international offices. They should be really focused on supporting independent theater. And so as someone who has worked with them for years and years, I know as a city council member, I could hold their feet to the fire. And it really gets to the issue of why I'm running. I've been a 3-time city commissioner. I understand city government inside and out, and I have a very strong record of supporting the arts, which is why I have the endorsement of all of the arts and entertainment unions that have really come behind me and that are focused on trying to rebuild our cultural spaces and put the arts at the forefront.
Thank you so much. Similar question to you, Kim. We have in your responses, you indicated in your response to the question about open culture, you expressed support for formalizing and the process of accessing public spaces, is what you wrote, to cut down on inefficiency and bureaucracy. What would efficient access to public spaces for independent artists look like to you? And what could you do in council to achieve that?
Sure. So as I said, I've been a huge supporter of the open culture. I'm glad that we were able to pass some legislation, and I am supportive of legislation that is currently in the pipeline to expand open access to public space, particularly that is adjacent to city-owned property, to churches, to schools, to really be able to utilize that space. I think similar to how we bring efficiency to all parts of city government, it comes down to eliminating a lot of the bureaucracy. Oftentimes when we talk about things like permitting, we often have to deal with multiple agencies. I would really like to see us be able to sort of consolidate all of those efforts into one agency that could take care of permitting, make sure that requirements are met, making sure that the price to do these things, to access these permits, isn't so high that folks can't access them. I think all of that comes into play when we're talking about accessing our public spaces. I agree with folks who have talked about utilizing our land use process, and instead of for example, asking developers to provide other types of incentives, that we ask them to invest in open spaces for culture, for performance spaces. I think that's going to be incredibly important. I think anything that we can do in the city council to eliminate the bureaucracy, to make the efforts more efficient so that folks are able to get these permits easily, so that they are able to access them. And then most importantly, promote their work. The city, I think, has a role to play in promoting these efforts, in promoting these spaces that folks are using as part of open culture, to get tourism and tourists back to be accessing these spaces, to be enjoying them. So I think that I would use every effort and every piece of leverage at my disposal to be able to promote these efforts and expand open culture throughout the city.
Thank you so much. Next question, we're going to head down to Council District 3 for Erik. Erik, you mentioned in your opening that this is home to the largest concentration of theaters, and that district has a number of indie theaters that we all love, but it also has long stretches of empty storefronts along Bleecker Street and elsewhere. How do you propose that we preserve the performance spaces that currently exist, but also provide opportunities for more to open?
You're exactly right that even before this latest crisis, retail blight was a very big problem. And you mentioned solutions like commercial rent control, but I also favor a vacancy fee to disincentivize landlords who keep their commercial spaces vacant for a very long time. But one of my proposals is to pair that with pop-up, artist, and performance space. So if you're a landlord who has a vacant storefront and you're holding out for a tenant, or you might not even be able to get a tenant, because sometimes landlords, they just don't want a bar or restaurant. They want a different kind of tenant, but there isn't one to come by at that moment. We disincentivize them from leaving it vacant, but that could be satisfied with putting in a artist or a performance space, working with a group like Chashama. I've worked a lot with Chashama, a nonprofit that brings in an artist. They work with the landlord. It helps the landlord because they can market the space. It helps the community and the arts community. And frequently those tenants become permanent tenants. Those are just a couple of things we can do, but it's got to be a top priority, because our city will not recover if our neighborhoods are filled with vacant storefronts. That's why people move here and live here, for the culture and for these mom and pop businesses.
Excellent, thank you. Councilmember Powers, you mentioned earlier you were an outspoken advocate for the federal Save Our Stages legislation. Thank you. Apart from traditional venues, you said in your responses that we should look for more opportunities for partnership between neighborhood venues and independent theaters to help promote the spaces and monetize their unused hours. How could the council promote a sustainable, accessible program to facilitate those relationships and activate these underutilized neighborhood spaces?
Sure, that was a good question I liked on your survey. I mean, what I had mentioned is that there are theaters in my district, for instance, that are acting as outside of the normal hours of operation or serving as civic spaces. And I do believe make money off of those. One of them hosts community board meetings, others serve or others serves as other spaces. We even use them in emergencies when we have a need for to congregate there was an emergency in that area and we use that space. So I think there's opportunities to both for the city in our own functions, like a community board meeting or something like that, to be able to utilize that space. But of course, I think with the Department of Cultural Affairs and other agencies here at the city, that could be part of their mission here, is to help those theaters find other partners that might need space. We're always looking for space to do public meetings in or to do events at, my office included. And many times we pay for them. And so I think there's an opportunity at the city agency level. Of course, I'd be happy to, to help with that, to find partners for those spaces outside of those normal operating hours. And I think as part of the recovery effort, we're going to do a lot of things. Again, rent relief and like longstanding eviction moratoriums beyond the normal one for cultural institutions is going to be part of that. But I think one way is to also secure them and keep them where they are, is to also find organizations that could be partners for them in those unused moments.
Thank you so much. Next question is for Christopher Marte. In your response to our questionnaire, you also mentioned finding ways to activate underutilized open spaces. Everyone noticing a theme here. What could you do as a council member to open them up to independent artists as affordable, accessible rehearsal and performance spaces?
Yeah. So first, we could give a tax incentive to anyone that has a vacant storefront now. So give them a 45-day tax credit if they're going to use that space for the performing arts, especially for struggling artists that need the space to practice and to perform. Second, we could use our office as an organizing office, right? Reaching out to landlords, reaching out to other commercial tenants that are using unused space and trying to activate those by connecting them with LIT and other small theater institutions in our district. Another way we could do is making sure that people know what we're doing as a council office. And I think this is really important, and partnering up with LIT, because everything that happens in the community board sometimes stays within the community board. And I think as a council office, we have to do the outreach, because if not, we can have amazing programs. We could give tax credits, but if people don't know about it, then it's never going to happen. And so I think it's having someone that's going to be energetic and passionate and make sure that these spaces are activated. As many of us said, whenever there's an empty storefront, that makes our city less attractive, that makes our city less safe. By bringing the magic performing arts, brings that itself magic, and makes our neighborhood so much more special, like we know Chinatown, Lower East Side, Soho, and Tribeca are. And so it's making sure that we have a council member that isn't going to sit by and let everything just pass by, is someone that's going to be out there looking for these vacant spaces, making the connection, and making sure that we can activate them as quickly as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Similar question to you, Ms. Lee. You said that streamlining the process of accessing public spaces is a priority for you, and that commitments made by developers to maintain public spaces are often unfulfilled. Sadly, too true. What could you do as a member of council to enforce those commitments and open up more already existing underutilized spaces to indie artists in the community?
Yes, so thank you for the question. I served on the community board for 10 years before joining the office of Councilmember Chin. So I know far too well commitments that developers have made and then found reasons not to follow through on them. I think that similar to what we did with Essex Crossing, we set up a task force that continually monitors all of the commitments that the developer has made to keep their feet to the fire. So one, I think that with each project, there needs to be people who have followed that project from beginning to end, who have institutional knowledge on what was promised. And if it's not promised, that they have teeth, whether it's through the council member's office, to take away some of the other benefits that they've gotten. Developers have long benefited from being able to pick and choose what to promise and what to get, and then they get everything and tax breaks, and then we don't get what we're promised. So there needs to be accountability. There needs to be accountability from a very local level, because performing arts is not just about revenue and not just about this community coming back, right? We have to think about the value of arts and culture to our children. And as we come back as a city and think about mental health and trauma, we also need to realize that we have to incorporate all these programs into our schools and into our community centers so that performing arts becomes part of the healing process. So that's something I'm committed to doing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now back to Council District 2, Councilmember Rivera. You co-sponsored the Open Culture Bill, as you noted earlier. Thank you so much for that. You said that it should be expanded to include city-owned open spaces, school courtyards, even the possibility of the city investing in organizations that make use of vacant storefronts. Something that's already come up tonight. I mean, heck yeah, we're all about it. But how? Open culture, as it is now, was significantly scaled back from its original intention. How will you get the council and the mayor's office to back a more open and inclusive vision for this program?
That's a great question. Thank you. I think honestly, we need bold leaders who are trying to think creatively and who are trying to be innovative. I mean, even the bill that I passed on suspending personal liability in some of these commercial leases, that was, really, I think, a creative solution to a problem, and looking kind of in the council on how we can help small businesses in case they closed, that their life savings wouldn't be absolutely wiped out. I think that we have a couple of things we can do in the council. We do the budget, we have land use, and we have our charter mandated responsibility of oversight and investigation. We should be looking at the organizations that are helping out some of these smaller institutions. And for those agencies that aren't working with us, we have to use that O&I in order to bring them on the record and ask them, why aren't they working with some of the most important organizations in the city? As was mentioned, I think art therapy is going to be really, really important to the whole healing and recovering process. And I think there are other things that we can do as a council, including, again, the funding, making sure that we are also looking at some of the use types. I think some of these organizations, especially in new development, could be seen as community facilities. And so that reconsideration of certain arts venues would allow to kind of explore their inclusion in special zoning designations or even shift their use type. And I think that's a creative land use solution as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. We only have a couple minutes left, so we're going to do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down reaction. Show of thumbs. Can we get everybody on the screen? Excellent. Show of thumbs. Do you support expanding the recently created Open Culture program? Do you support making open culture permanent? Do you support the creation of a director of the public realm to make public spaces more transparently accessible, not just to artists, but to all residents of New York? Excellent. And would you support a program that offered vacant city-owned space to cultural nonprofits for free or very low cost? Lovely. I like to see all those thumbs. That's amazing. Thank you all so very much for being here, for your very thoughtful responses. That is all the time that we have. Thank you, panelists.